Hello, everyone. Welcome to Saturday's edition of Weekend Waypoints, a production of SEC Extra and D1Baseball.com. I'm your host, Joe Healy, and today we're going to preview the CWS Finals between LSU and Coastal Carolina getting started tonight, Saturday, 6 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Very much looking forward to that after a couple days off, a couple days with no baseball here in Omaha. We finally get back on the field here today. Before we get started on anything specific, I have to remind you this episode of Weekend Waypoints and every episode of Weekend Waypoints is brought to you by Academy Sports and Outdoors. The sun's out and the fun is on at Academy Sports and Outdoors. Score a cool pool, savor summer flavor with a grill, prep for fishing weekends, or mount up with a new mountain bike. However you have fun, you can't lose with our top brands. Gear up online at academy.com or at your local store. All right, everybody. Big one tonight, big one this weekend. LSU, Coastal Carolina. A lot of sub storylines here, I would say, beyond just the general on-field stakes. You've got the 2016 Super Regional rematch. Coastal Carolina went to Alec Box and swept LSU in that Super Regional. That's actually the only two games in which these two programs have played in their history, which kind of surprised me. You just figure, over enough time, especially with these two teams being perennial postseason teams, you just figure eventually they would have had to come up against each other again at some point, but nope, they have not. So 2-0 Coastal is against LSU all time. 0-2, of course, the reverse there for LSU. There's also the Jay Johnson piece of this. Jay Johnson, of course, as the head coach at Arizona in 2016, got the Wildcats to the CWS Finals against Coastal. Coastal winning that series with a crazy game that went an extra day. The game started the next afternoon in front of a relatively sparse crowd, and then Coastal got the job done there. So little Jay Johnson revenge situation here with this series as well. Let me throw some other numbers at you in this series that I found interesting. These are courtesy of our friend Pat James, who you might hear referenced time in occasionally here on this show on our podcasts. Thanks to Pat James, because he works behind the scenes for us here at D1 Baseball, and in addition to helping make this show and our podcast run smoothly, he's also a wonderful statistician behind the scenes and provides us with a lot of information. This was going back to when LSU went 2-0 here. This is the 8th time LSU started 2-0 in the CWS. They won the national title in 6 of the previous 7. LSU has also won 7 of the 8 trips it has made to the championship game or series. Of course, it used to just be a one-off national title. Before 2003, it was a one-off national title game. Now is, of course, a 3-game series. So they've won 7 of the previous 8 when they've been at this stage. So a history for LSU of when they get this far, they tend to get it done. Now, the flip side, though, like Coastal's been here one time and they won the national title. Actually, kind of amazing when you consider as good as Coastal is, right? I mean, they've missed regionals occasionally, but for the most part, they're in regionals every year. That as many times as they've been in regionals, they've been to Omaha twice, and in both instances, they got to the championship series. Now, of course, they won the other one, so they're looking to repeat that. But just kind of interesting that this is only their second time, and here they are going to play for a national title again. Got some comments waiting. Let me go grab those, and then we'll get into some. I've got some information on Coastal starting pitcher Cameron Flukie, in case you're an LSU fan and you just haven't watched that much Coastal at this point. Also got some other some key players, some stats, things to go through before we get you out of here today. Caleb Falk says, "Morning, Joe. Good morning, Caleb. Happy to see Cowan have a good bounce back performance after 2 rough outings against a top SEC lineup. It was huge. It probably gives LSU a lot of confidence they can go back to him in this series in a big spot, whether that's, starting a potential game 3 if they've already used Case and Evans, or, a long relief deal, whatever it is. They've got to have a lot of confidence they can go back to him. He looked a lot sharper, and maybe the rest, because he hasn't thrown as much of late, maybe the rest was important there, because he was getting used quite a bit he was getting used quite a bit early in the season, and he was great. and then it just felt like he hit a wall a little bit, and so maybe the rest is exactly what he needed, and now he's back on track. We shall see, but certainly he was awesome the other night, and that's huge. Eric Simmons says he thinks LSU can beat Coastal Carolina. I think they absolutely can. The flip side is also true. I do think Coastal can beat LSU. It feels to me like a little bit of a 55-45 or a 60-40 leaning LSU type of series, but certainly could go either way. Like any, and I think most of the folks who are watching this and consume our content consistently at D1 Baseball, I don't know that anyone in that subset of people still thinks this, but if there is anyone out there that still kind of thinks, oh, it's a Sunbelt team, it's, they don't play the same level of schedule, it's not the same level of talent. That might be true in a lot of cases with a lot of teams. It is not true with this one. Like Coastal's a different deal. But I think most of y'all watching this probably understand that and don't need to be told twice. Carl Dunn says it's time to get number 8, which, oh, by the way, if LSU does get number 8, would give them some separation. They're behind only USC in like college baseball history for number of national titles. USC has 12. Most of them won within a very narrow span of time in the 70s and 80s. LSU at 8 would be 2 ahead of Texas, which has 6. So LSU maybe trying to create some separation there between them and the Longhorns. Carl Dunn said, again, number 8, it's going to be tough, but I feel good with LSU's rotation. Yeah, to me, that's the biggest thing for LSU is that if Coastal's going to win this thing, it's going to have to beat one of Anderson or Ianson to even get it to a third game. And when that's the case, I think LSU is going to feel like it has a pitching advantage, even as good as Coastal's pitchers are, and they are, and we'll talk about that. It's going to feel like it has an advantage in those first 2 games, and how could you not with those 2 guys? So I'm kind of with you, Carl. Ryan says, I'm expecting a low-scoring weekend with these 2 outstanding pitching staffs and wind blowing in at 25 miles an hour. Yeah, it is windy here. It is also very hot here. The high today is 104. Maybe if this was like 2019 when Michigan was in the finals, that might feel more relevant, but you've got a team from Baton Rouge and one from Myrtle Beach here. Like something tells me the hot is not going to bother them all that much, but it is hot. And let me look out the window here. I can't see the flag. There's kind of a flag where I can see around the corner here, but I can't see it from the angle I'm at. But it was very windy yesterday. It felt like, because it was a hot wind, it felt like somebody was blowing a hairdryer on you is kind of what I compared it to. But yeah, with the wind blowing in, and I mean, the park has already played pretty big here over the last week. So the park playing like it is plus the wind is like is going to make it probably a tough offensive environment. And that plays into the hand of what these 2 teams want to do, right? And, both of these teams want to try to win this game with pitching, win these games with pitching. So that plays into their hand. Morning, Clay. I see you there. Canes Cats Heat has officially announced the 2026 national champions of the Miami Hurricanes. We will see. Clay Phillips says should be a great championship series. Coastal's poke the bear and press in the presser, popcorn ready, LOL. Yeah, there was a deal yesterday where they got asked basically just kind of like that question. It was phrased kind of awkwardly, I would say, is part of the reason why this happened. But basically it was kind of like, what do you admire about? And so to me, that was the problem. Like they didn't just say something nice about LSU, or what they were actually getting at, which is, what does LSU do well? What do they succeed at? What do you have to be prepared for? I think that's actually what the question was trying to get at. But the way it was phrased was, what's something you admire about LSU, or that you, something like that. And they were just like, the first 2 guys just kind of stayed quiet. And the last guy, who I believe was Jacob Morrison, said not much, and like kind of had a confused look on his face. Like, I'm not sure what you're asking. So I thought it was kind of funny. Like, I guess it is kind of like a poking the bear situation, but we'll see if that's a little extra motivation, but I honestly think it was I think it was one of those situations where I don't know that anybody anticipated that. Like the question, I don't think was meant to be provocative, but it ended up being that. RSP 1218 says Morrison going tomorrow. This feels like a must win for LSU. Yeah. it's interesting because I pause because Morrison has the better numbers, but there's an argument made Fluky has the better stuff. Like it is interesting that their ERAs, just to use one stat, their ERAs are as far apart as they are because I perceive them to be roughly the same in terms of quality. But your point is well taken. Like you don't really want to go into tomorrow if you're LSU down one and then have to beat a guy with a sub 2 ERA. Like that's just never going to be, or whatever it is. It might be above 2 now, but it was been sub 2 most of the year. So your point is well taken. Like anybody who's had that much success, you just don't, you don't want it to come down to that, I guess is what I'm saying. So I'm with you on that. Cool message here. Timothy Smith says, Mountaineer fan here that drove 935 miles. Whew, my back and neck hurts just thinking about that drive. I drove 935 miles to the Baton Rouge Super Regional. My family and I were treated amazing while at LSU for those 2 games, and I'm cheering for them. Go Tigers. Cool story there. And that's generally what I hear, for all of the negative stuff you sometimes hear about fan bases. And look, I think we can all agree on this. Every fan base has idiots or people that just can't act right. Generally speaking, that the big fans, like the truly diehard fans, at least in college baseball, I think most of them that I know tend to treat, as long as everybody's just there to have a good time and enjoy baseball, like visiting fans tend to get treated pretty well. So I'm not surprised to hear that, but it is awesome to hear that. All right. Inside LSU Baseball with Jason Armstrong says, congrats for getting here, Coastal. My heartbeat has never been steadier. I mean, and I get that. It should be. LSU's playing great. They're a team that's tough to kill, to put it that way, as Arkansas found out. And you've got, two of the 5 best starting pitchers in the country. Honestly, this one of the reasons why this championship series is so much fun is between Anderson, Ianson, Fluky, and Morrison. We probably have 4 of the best 15 starting pitchers in the country, maybe 4 of the best 12. I mean, if you really want to cut it down, that's kind of what we're going to be treated to here. Doesn't mean they can't. Look, everybody has bad starts, and they could happen here for any of those 4 guys. But on paper, we're in for a real treat on the mound. Jeremy Scott says Alabama is the only team to beat both. Interesting. I did not know that. Donovan Adams says, who do you think wins a series? Go Tigers. Yeah, I've gone LSU. Like I said, I think it's kind of like a 60-40 LSU kind of deal. 55-45 maybe is more appropriate, but a slight edge LSU. I think that for me, it's that their 2 starting pitchers are better than Coastal's 2 starting pitchers on balance. The lineup, I give the edge to LSU. Lineups that are built similarly, right, in terms of like they're trying to get something from all 9 guys, because it's not, look, there's no Tommy White or Dylan Cruz in the LSU lineup. As good as Jared Jones is, those 2 guys were just total, almost like, I say one of one, even though they were in the lineup together. Supernova superstars in college baseball, just like on another level. So these lineups are not centered around 1 or 2 guys. They get something for everybody. But I like LSU's quality depth a little bit better on the position player side. I might like Coastal's bullpen better. But on the other side of that, Coastal doesn't have anybody like Kason Evans or Zach Cowan that has been that type of swingman type of guy. Now, part of that is because the rotation's been so good, they didn't need that guy. So maybe they do have that guy, and they just never found that out because they didn't need him. So I might like Coastal's bullpen better, but I like LSU's lineup better. I like their starting rotation a little bit better. And so that's why I lean LSU, but it's not a strong lean. Did Coastal recruit Zach Cowan from high school? Mark S. asks, yeah, he started at Wofford, so like it's an in-state thing. I have to assume so, Mark, that he was on their radar at least, because if you're good enough to go to Wofford, which is a lesser program than Coastal, but a pretty good like a pretty good program, I have to assume he was at least on their radar. But just in a world where his changeup isn't as good as it is now, though, like he's a guy who probably coming out of high school was a mid to high 80s guy, and if the changeup wasn't what it is now, I could see a scenario. And it's not like he's like a tall, projectable guy who you would have thought, oh, he's going to add a bunch of elo. I could see how he would have kind of fallen through the cracks, but I do have to imagine, given that he went to a school in state, that he was at least on the radar. Carl Dunn says, glad you to Timothy Smith. Glad you had a good time, Baton Rouge. Hope we can do a regular season series versus West Virginia soon. From your mouth to God's ears, that would be great. I would love that. And I agree with you, Clay. He mentions talking about the bulletin board till it makes the game better, in my opinion. I totally agree. Like, I have no issue with it either way. Andrew Cavanis says, I feel like both teams feel like they should be the favorite in the series. Should be a good one. Yeah, and honestly, that's fair. Like, because if you're LSU, you're like, hey, we're LSU. We've proven ourselves to be the best team out of the SEC this season. Therefore, we're the best team in the country, and that's totally fair. And then if you're Coastal, you're like, hey, we've won 26 games in a row. So we have a claim to make on being the best team in the country, and we should be the favorite. And I think both are fair. Only one team can win, obviously, but I think you're right that both feel like they're the favorite here. I think that's fun. Sorry, I'm scrolling to make sure I'm caught up here. Real quick to talk about Arkansas. Who does Arkansas lose after this season besides Logan Maxwell? Well, just off the top of my head, I'd have to go. But Fahiva Aloy is going to be a high draft. Zach Root is going to be a high draft. So there's those two guys right off the top of the head, and those are two of their most important pieces. Beidelshees is draft eligible. I'm just going down the pitching staff. So like, he's a guy you could lose because he's probably honestly a better prospect right now than he is a college pitcher, because it was an up and down season for him. So there's that. Just kind of going around their infield. I mean, like, depending on how, Ryder Helfrich is probably a draft. That's probably a guy. Is he a sophomore? Yeah. So maybe not him. Anyway, it's hard to do off the top of my head, Mark. I got to be honest, but like, Fahiva Aloy and Zach Root are, two pieces they're definitely going to lose that are centerpieces of that whole operation. So that's going to require some rebuilding for sure. RSP 1218 says, this is effectively a home series for LSU. Wonder if the crowd will play a factor. I think it probably will, but the thing is, in this, hold on, let me get a drink of water. It's such a big stadium. It's a little bit different than like the box, or I don't know, pick your college stadium that's known to be loud. This is such a physically bigger stadium. So the sound, I don't know if it's just not as on top of the field as the college stadiums are. So I think it'll play a factor, but it won't probably be as loud as you would think, given the sheer number of LSU fans that'll be there. Just because of the size, and the stands are kind of pulled back off of the field a little bit more, and it's open into downtown. So, but yeah, I do think it will play a factor, because I mean, how could it not, when you're going to have, there'll be, let's just for easy math, call it, 26,000 people there, and 23,000 of them will be LSU fans. So yeah, how could it not? Carl Dunn says, maybe we can get Jobu to go to Arkansas. They are so snake bitten. DVH is a great coach. He's like Mike Martin right now. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I wrote a column about that the other day. Go and read it if you haven't. Like, it's just, I don't believe in jinxes, but man, Arkansas really could make you a believer. Call out is going LSU in 2. That could be. Yes, Jeremy, that's right. Alabama and Coastal played in Jacksonville. That's right. I was there for that. Austin Larroquette says, good morning, Joe. I saw a stat that talked about Fluky, and he has an ERA above 5 when pitching against a Power 4 program this year. Do you know anything about this? I don't. Doesn't mean it's not true. Like, that very well could be true. I have not seen that, but a couple things there. One, it very well could be true. Like, the reality is that the Sun Belt, week to week is not going to be as tough as certainly the SEC, and probably even like the ACC or Big 12. Definitely not. But on the other hand, that means that we're probably looking at a smaller sample right? Like I know he pitched against Alabama, but I'd have to go back and look at the rest of their schedule to see who else he's pitched against. It's probably a small number of starts, and if you have one bad start in that mix, then that your ERA is going to get thrown off. So I'd have to look harder at that, but I believe it. That very well could be the case. Call out says Coastal pitchers aren't that good. It's the guy behind the plate making them get the strike calls and look good. I will agree and disagree with that. I think their pitchers are that good. However, they are made better by having Caden Bodine behind the plate stealing strikes. Like I do think that is a thing. I do not think it's the entire reason their pitchers are good. And then he says, well, not better than LSU pitchers. That I agree with. Like I think I'd certainly take Anderson over Coastal's top two starters, and I might take Ianson. I'd have to look at that a little bit closer, but yeah, on balance, LSU's guys are a little better than Coastal's. But Caden Bodine, very good catcher. Joe, remember when I said Bear can go? I do remember this actually. When I said Bear can go 0 for 5 with 5 Ks, but come back and change the game with one swing, make that 3 swings, change the game since then. Yeah, that's why you have a guy like him. What he brings to the table is, he can, even if he's slumping, he's going to run into a ball eventually, right? And we've seen that. So, yeah, game changing bat when he makes contact there for sure. I do remember that. So good call there. Here you go, Carl Dunn. He has a 5.91 ERA versus power 4 this season. So there you go. Interesting. That is a good stat there. So kudos to you guys for pulling that out. Ryan says to Mark, I saw that Frazier, that's Gabe Frazier for Arkansas, entered the portal too. I had actually not seen that, so that's interesting. Mark brings up a good point. I think this could be a factor. Wind blowing in mostly helps Coastal because they don't rely on the home run as much. 103 home runs for LSU, 66 for Coastal. But the wind does specifically help Cade Anderson, who's given up 16 home runs this season. And by comparison, Ianson has given up 6. Interesting. Yeah, Anderson does get victimized for the home run occasionally. It's like when the ball gets hit hard against Anderson, which isn't often, it tends to go out of the park, which is just kind of a quirky little thing. But you're right that the wind blowing in could be a little bit of an equalizer. Now, if Jared Jones gets a hold of one at 111, like yanked, like it's probably still going to go. But, the ball that just kind of carries and carries and carries might not get out with the wind blowing that hard. So I think you bring up a good point that it can be a little bit of an equalizer for Coastal. But we'll see. All right, real quick before I get you out of here, a couple of other things I pulled. Interesting note here with Anderson and Ianson. They'll be the 4th set of teammates to finish top 3 nationally in strikeouts of the last 25 years. The other 3 duos of teammates were Leiter and Rocker at Vanderbilt. That was in 2021. Trevor Bauer and Garrett Cole. That was in, I believe, 2012. And then Wade Townsend and Jeff Neiman, who you might now remember, but those 2 guys were at Rice back in 2003. That was a Rice team that won the national title. So 2 teams there, Cole and Bauer, UCLA with Cole and Bauer, and Vanderbilt with Leiter and Rocker got to Omaha, didn't win it all. Rice with Townsend and Neiman did. Quick notes on, first, I was thinking about under the radar players here that could play a big role. One is Jake Brown for LSU. He's such an interesting, the way LSU and Jay Johnson use him, like just as a secret weapon kind of. They'll pinch hit him, they'll start him strategically. This year as a pinch hitter, he's 5 for 12. He's 4 for 6 with a walk and a hit by pitch. So he's been on base 6 out of 8 times here in Omaha. So he's swinging it well. And then for Coastal, Dean Mijos, a middle infielder, guy who can play center field, shortstop, second base, really good athlete. DH is some. He's been injured for a lot of the second half of the year. He only returned to the lineup here in Omaha, and he's 5 for 12 with a double, triple, and 3 runs batted in here in Omaha since returning to the lineup. So a couple key players that are a bit under the radar, I would say, in this series. We've talked a lot about Cam Fluke, just to put some numbers to what he has here. 7-1 record, 3.29 ERA, 109 strikeouts, a 2.11 opponent batting average in 95 and 2/3 innings. Fastball average is 95. It has been up to 98. He gets a lot of chase on the fastball. I would assume a lot of that, without looking at the video, I can't say for certain, but I assume a lot of that's up in the zone. That is the 96th percentile for chase rate on a fastball. So pretty high up there within. That's chase rate, 96th percentile of all Division I pitchers in chase rate on the fastball. So that's pretty impressive stuff there. Best swing and miss pitch is a curveball in the mid-70s. It's got a 49% whiff rate, which puts him in the 94th percentile of all Division I curveballs in terms of whiff rate. He'll also flip in a slider and then a changeup. Changeup doesn't get used a lot, but it does have a relatively high whiff rate as well. And he's in the 90th percentile of strike throwers in Division I. Just to give you some comparison, like Cade Anderson, arguably his best swing and miss pitch is actually like pound for pound his fastball. It doesn't get as much whiff as some of the off-speed stuff, but when you compare it to other fastballs, he's in the 99th percentile for fastball whiff rate and fastball zone whiff rate. So he's getting a lot of swing and miss on the fastball in the zone, which is impressive, which tells you that fastball is just, it's getting on hitters and it's uncomfortable for them, is a lot of what that tells you there. So really excited about the pitching matchup tonight. And we will certainly talk about that as it goes on. All right. Jeremy McCollum, I will answer this one more question. It says, Jeremy, I remember you being a Hog fan. Huge Hog fan here. Do you think Arkansas will get back to Omaha? Yes. Yes, I think they will. Maybe, I don't know about next year, but in general, yes. In addition, do you think we will ever win one? Yeah, I think you get there enough, you're going to eventually win one. Now, I know with Florida State and Mike Martin, it didn't happen, but I genuinely don't believe in jinxes or that Dave Van Horn is some sort of choker that has kept them from winning one. I think they'll eventually get there. So there you go. All right. There are some more comments in here, but I got to hit the road. Not really the road. I'm walking. We've got a live show coming up here about 11 a.m. The full D1 baseball crew will have a live show from the Omaha Experience, which is the store with the, you've probably seen the videos of us sitting in front of the gloves. So we've got another show this morning over there. Starts at 11 a.m. local time, 12 p.m. Eastern time, depending on what time zone you're in there. So I've got to head out so I can go walk over there and get ready for that show. So we've got to cut it there. But thank you for joining this morning. Thank you for Mac ask who you picking, Joe. Give me LSU with Anderson on the mound tonight. Have a hard time imagining anybody beating Cade Anderson at this time of year. So let's go LSU tonight. We'll have our picks on the live show as well. I'll be joined by Kendall Rogers, Aaron Fitt, and Jack DeLongchamp. So a fun little group there to talk through this opening games. All right. That is going to do it for this edition of Weekend Waypoints, production of SEC Extra and D1Baseball.com. Thank you to Academy Sports and Outdoors for sponsoring this and every Weekend Waypoints. Thank you guys for joining me live and for all of your questions and your comments. That's my favorite part of this deal, so I appreciate you every time you show up. I'll be back tomorrow morning. We'll recap tonight's game, look ahead to Sunday's game. That'll be same time, same channel. Well, I can't guarantee the exact same time, but similar time, same channel. I'll talk to y'all then. Enjoy the baseball today.